It's Friday, April 24th, and time for your Barbados Today morning news update. Unions representing workers in the public and private sector appear unanimously opposed to salary cuts for workers whose jobs have so far survived the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. They are also adamant that retrenchment should be a last resort. Recently, local businessman Andrew Bino suggested that salaries may have to be slashed by 50%, but the General Secretaries of the Barbados Workers Union, the Unity Workers Union, and the National Union of Public Workers dismissed the suggestion, contending that the slightest salary adjustments would crush some low-wage frontline workers. They also warned that changes to contracts of employment should only occur after extensive negotiations. The local real estate market takes a hit as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Word of this from President of the Barbados Estate Agents and Valuers Association, Inc., Susan Armfield, who tells Barbados Today there's been a more than 50% drop in the number of companies and individuals inquiring about purchases or rentals. Existing renters, she said, were also seeking to negotiate new terms with real estate operators as the pandemic continues to take a bite out of their income. She said at least 25% of the pre-COVID transactions in the local real estate market have been put on hold, with parties agreeing to wait out the pandemic. It will take some time for regional economies to recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's according to Pro Vice Chancellor for Global Affairs at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Richard Bernal, who said the situation was not all doom and gloom. Speaking recently during a teleconference entitled COVID-19 Approaching Code Red, Dr. Bernal said he expected the Caribbean to bounce back from the huge economic fallout expected from the global pandemic.
There are going to be opportunities in any crisis. The famous dictum is, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Put more simply, there are opportunities even in the midst of a crisis, and we must look for those. We have already seen a number of innovative developments, entrepreneurial activities at the household level, at the level of firms who have redeployed or redacted their production facilities to produce different goods, etc. So all is not doom and gloom. The Caribbean people have a long record of resilience to all kinds of man-made and natural disasters, and there's no reason why we should not find creative ways to expand.
But even in his positive outlook, Dr. Bernal maintained that the region should prepare itself for the post-COVID-19 world.
I remain convinced that the Caribbean people can deal successfully with this terrible pandemic. It is going to be difficult, but I see no reason why we should not be able to rebuild our economies. I end on the cautionary note that while we rebuild our economies, we must realize that life is never going to be exactly as it was before, and certainly the global economy will experience some changes, and we have to adjust to those in a proactive, strategic way so that we can resuscitate the economic development of the region.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
News from our regional neighbors now. Health officials in Grenada express concern about persons who are asymptomatic carriers of the COVID-19 virus. This as investigations continue into the island's latest positive case, a man who has no travel history or known contact with anyone with the virus. We get more in this report from the GBN.
Asymptomatic carriers are people who have the deadly coronavirus but are not showing any symptoms. And since Grenada's latest case has no travel history and no known contact with any of the 14 previously confirmed positive cases, authorities are actively engaged in contact tracing.
Acting Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of
Health is Dr. Francis Martin.
We are very, very concerned about that, and hence the reason we have shifted our case definition over time to now include people who have no symptoms but have credible evidence that they may have been exposed, or they have whatever it is that makes you feel that there is a possibility. We are actually willing to test these people as well to help, exonerate or disqualify whether or not people can be asymptomatic carriers, and you can actually identify someone who is asymptomatic and positive. So that is a big worry for us, because it means then that it calls for more resources, it calls for more time, it calls for more healthcare providers to go out there to provide the care. And of course, it opens up the window for us to actually have a lot more patients who are positive, and now we have to deal with more patients who are positive.
Until now, all confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the Spice Isle have been imported or import-related.
And finally, on the international scene, the U.S. Congress has passed a new COVID-19 relief package totaling $484 billion, the fourth such aid bill to clear Congress in response to the pandemic. The details of that story in this Reuters TV report.
On this vote, the yeas are 388, the nays are 5, with 1 present. The bill is passed.
The House of Representatives passed a nearly $500 billion coronavirus relief package on Thursday, pushing the total spending to address the crisis to an unprecedented near $3 trillion. The economic toll from the virus has now thrown a record 26 million Americans out of work in just the past 5 weeks.
This is really a very, very, very sad day. We come to the floor with nearly 50,000 deaths.
Before the vote, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi welcomed bipartisan support for the bill, but slammed Republicans who refused to include additional funding for state and local governments.
Unfortunately, they did not want to put the heroes into this bill today as fully as they should by supporting state and local. And what does the distinguished leader on the Senate side, Mr. McConnell, say? I'm not doing any more bills. I think the state should go bankrupt. Oh, really?
The Republican-led Senate passed the legislation on Tuesday, after which Majority Leader Mitch McConnell made it clear that he was reluctant to give states federal aid.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.